first of all, you can develop discipline only through action, which means that you have to act in order for you to develop discipline. But if someone struggles with that, I personally would suggest to them to write down 10 reasons why they need to work out, right? How them not training is affecting their life. And I'm saying, for example, their libido is low, lack of energy, they're overweight, they don't look good in their clothes, etc. Just make that list. So when you read that list, it's going to obviously create certain emotions in you, which should propel you to take action.
Welcome to the Waste No Day podcast, a podcast specifically for and about the home services industry as it relates to plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and electrical. More than a podcast, Waste No Day is a credo, a determination, a mindset. It is a never-ending discipline. It is a refuse to lose pursuit. It is a wake-up call every morning to waste no day. Now here's your hosts, Brian Burton and Nate Minnick.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Waste No Day podcast. Your hosts, Nate and Brian, hanging out here with you. And we're dropping a new and healthy episode this week, focusing on physical fitness. We have a special guest joining us today, Ivan Cholakov, who's going to be helping us understand the importance of physical fitness as it relates to the home services industry. And we'll be excited to hear from him and some of his insight. Not only is this a guy who literally knows so much about it, but he lives and breathes it too. The guy's literally a mountain of a man, and we're excited to have him on our show. Actually, his first podcast too, so pretty cool to have him featured on the Waste No Day podcast. But before we jump into his interview, we want to break down the subject for you ourselves, and to do that, we're going to start off with our quote. Brian?
Physical fitness is not only one of the most important keys to a healthy body, it is the basis of dynamic and creative intellectual activity. John F. Kennedy.
Fitness. Like fitness pizza in my mouth?
Wow.
Nate Minnick. No, not original. Oh, yeah. I'd say what, fitness is one of those things that we all really could, I think, admit we need to do a little bit better on. And specifically for you all out there in trucks driving around, you know as well as I do that losing a couple pounds and taking that weight off of your knees that you're going up and down on every single day would probably be a good thing. And that's why we wanted to jump into the topic on this podcast, because it is something that we all kind of know, and we kind of look at ourselves in the mirror and say, yeah, I probably should. And hopefully this is that one item, that one podcast, that one little push that gets you moving in the direction of, okay, it's not something I should, it's something I will do.
Working out and weightlifting in particular can sound like, I don't know, maybe
boring.
It's so far from the way I see that. Well, I mean, if you're talking about like jogging or something, yeah, that sounds like just torture.
That's actually something I would do more.
But lifting weights, yeah, that's and just picking up heavy stuff like the good Lord, made the weights to have us do.
I pick things up and put them down.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. But before I ever did it, and I never worked out growing up, not until 2010. I always looked at it, especially when I was in a truck, as one, I don't have time. Two, I can't afford to be that sore and not be able to be very mobile. And three, I'll hurt myself and then I'll be off work. And it's really not. All three of those things were just
excuses.
Probably just excuses that I was telling myself so I didn't have to go work out. And I'll say in my 20s and probably early 30s, it didn't make that big of a difference. But now in my 40s, even in my mid 30s and into my 40s, I'd be a lot less fit as a result of not working out. So the strength would be dwindling and the belly would be getting bigger, and you get less and less stamina, like even like climbing stairs or dragging a water heater or a water softener with a little salt still in it. Finding the time is simply making the time. That's anybody who just says they don't have time for anything that's an excuse. We all know. You can say what you will to somebody on the outside, but everybody knows they could carve out time just by way of getting up a little bit earlier. But when I was in a truck, I actually worked out most of the time in the evening. So I would always have my gym bag with a protein shake in my truck ready to go. If I got off early, headed to the gym, if I didn't have a call, like, you know, it's 11 a.m. and my next call is a 1 to 4 and they won't be home until 1:30 and there's no call waiting, I'm heading right to the gym. Or, you know, on the way home, you got to have I had a membership to a 24-hour gym. So if it was fairly late, I still needed to get it in. I would go there and do like a 35, 40-minute workout. But, you know, if I'm off at 3:30, I'm going to do an hour and a half real set. But now in the position I'm in with 4 kids and a lot of sports to get them to, and school board meetings and all this nonsense that's going on right now, there's no such thing as the evening workout. So my wife and I get up at 4:15 and head to the gym, and I shower at the gym and she heads back home, and then I shoot into here in the morning. But I would love to sleep until 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'd love to do that every morning when the alarm goes off. I look at that thing and go, man, would I like another hour and a half sleep like everybody else does. But you just can't afford that. Number one, you can't afford it physically. Number two, what are you going to look back on 10 years and have gained by getting an extra hour and a half of sleep every morning versus having gotten up, beat your mind into submission to drag yourself out of that bed, jump in the cold car and drive down to the gym and get it in? And if you look back 10 years on one or the other, which one do you wish you had been doing for the last 10 years? Let's put it that way. That extra hour of sleep mean that much to you? And we don't always get to bed at a decent time. We have 4 kids, 2 dogs at the house, 2 cats. Like there's always something that is going to keep you awake late. And there are times we might not get to sleep until midnight. We're still getting up at 4:15. We're still going to the gym. It's just part of the routine. So it has to happen no matter what. What it will do is force you to get to bed a little bit earlier, because you're thinking in terms of how miserable I'm going to be halfway through tomorrow if I don't get any sleep tonight and still work out. But you still have to, that one's a non-negotiable for us. That's one we're going to do. The soreness and stuff like that, I mean, I still get myself sore every workout, but really the first week or two, probably I'd say the first 2 weeks, say you do three workouts a week, maybe chest and triceps Monday, and then back and biceps Wednesday, and then legs Friday, and then take the rest of the week off in the beginning just to, really start getting used to it. After week 2, you're not really getting all that sore anymore. It's not to the point where you can't functionally do your job. But what you still will see is you start getting stronger. Things that, I was in a truck way before I ever worked out, and then I was in a truck when I really started getting serious about lifting. And what I started to notice was things started coming apart a lot easier. Like carrying things up and down steps didn't leave me with a sore back anymore because I wasn't overcompensating as a result of my insanely weak Nate Minnick type arms and shoulders. That
seems not only inaccurate, but unlikely.
I keep mistaking the mic stand for Nate's bicep over my head. The soreness factor, and then the injury factor, which it is a real one. You don't go into that gym for the first time or your second month and start trying to hit 1 rep personal records. And I recommend finding a trainer to get you started, especially an online coach like Ivan is, because online coaches are not expensive. Like if you went to a gym and hired a personal trainer to work out with you, but they can tell you everything you need to know. So it's an easy first step to do. I don't use an online coach. I had all the coaching I needed when I got started. But I do recommend it for somebody who's never worked out before, because they exist. Like they didn't exist when I started working out. There were no online coaches, but now they do. And it's something that, figure out what you want to do. What do I want to do? Let's say you want to put on, well, maybe you don't even know what 15 pounds of muscle looks like, but say you want to develop, bigger shoulders and chest and arms and legs. tell your coach this is what you want. Or maybe you want to lose weight, you want to slim down and get fit, or maybe you just want to get physically stronger. You want to be more of a force to reckon with when you're dragging a water heater up the steps or whatnot. Whatever it is, you can contact a coach and say, here's what I'm looking to do. Like Ivan just seems like a really good guy. And that coach will tell you, here's the process. Here are the steps. His is, I believe his course is 90 days, and he will tell you how to get there with what to eat and what to do at the gym, probably what to do on days off of the gym, I would imagine. I'm guessing he'll go into your sleep habits. But it's a great way to get started, and I recommend it for everybody.
That's right, Brian. And it is something that is needed in the home services industry. We've talked about it before on our keto podcast, but nobody's getting younger here, and this is a physically demanding field. So the more that we can do to take care of our bodies, not only for the sake of our customers and our career, but for ourselves and our children and grandchildren, to be able to hopefully throw a ball with them and, get down on the floor and wrestle around with them, and not, feel like those are too painful or not available to us because of not taking care of our bodies along the way. So with that being said, we want to invite Ivan Cholakov to sit in your passenger seat today. Our guest today is Ivan Cholakov. That's Cholakov. He was born in Bulgaria and came to the United States in 2012 as a certified strength and conditioning specialist / nutritionist. He has a bachelor in marketing and is the creator of the Spartan Dad coaching program. As a Christian, he not only loves training and coaching people, but he also hobbies in martial arts, weightlifting, reading, traveling, studying, and theology. Very cool. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Glad to having me, Nate.
Yeah, welcome, buddy. It's good to talk to you in person. Ivan, I ran into on the Extreme Ownership Facebook group, which is the Facebook group kind of built around Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership book. I think there's like 50,000 members in there or something. And every time I saw a post by Ivan, it was always motivating and inspiring. He's like super fit, just dude's jacked, and always doing crazy workouts. But he very freely gives of himself in that group, where he's just giving tips and tricks on physical fitness, but also like working out in ways that keep you from getting injured and stuff like that I really benefit from when I'm working out myself. So I thought it would be a good idea to have you on. Also, you seem to have a very cool story that I thought our audience would benefit from hearing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you came from, Ivan?
Thanks for having me, first of all. Brian, my name is Ivan. I'm originally from Bulgaria. I was fortunate and blessed to be able to come to the United States 9 years ago. It was an amazing experience, and I am from Bulgaria. I'm into fitness and nutrition. I'm a registered dietitian and also a precision nutritionist, also certified personal trainer and strength and conditioning coach. And I got into fitness since a very young age. I was pretty much very active. In my family, training was something that was pretty much imposed by my parents. My father was a boxer, so I started training since I was 10 years old. I got into wrestling. Then later on, I became more involved into weightlifting and lifting weights and fitness. But that is something that since a very young age was very, very important to me. And down the years, especially once I came to the United States, I fully got involved into coaching people and specifically working on their nutrition. And I saw the changes that happened with people, how their habits change and how they started becoming very, very healthy. And that's something that is extremely important for me, and also gives me a lot of pleasure and a lot of satisfaction.
That's really great, Ivan, and we appreciate not only hearing that as your story, but also you're living that out. I mean, I've seen pictures of you. You're no small guy, and I think you're living by the words that you're preaching there.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that is, as I said, is very important for me. And as you know, leading by example is crucial, because we can talk a lot of things and we can try to motivate people, but example speaks louder than words, and our actions are something that people have to go by, and that is this is why it's very, very important for me too.
Yeah. So you said your father was a boxer?
Yeah, he was a trained boxer. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2015. But yeah, so he was very into training, and I started training since a very young age because of that. Down the road, obviously, I enjoyed it as well, and it's just the culture in Bulgaria is quietly different a little bit than here in the United States. I was living in the days of communism, which pretty much training was, I wouldn't say it was mandatory, but if you wanted to graduate from high school and university down the line, you had to train. You pretty much had to pick a specific sport you want to get involved with. And everybody my age and my generation were extremely active in high school. We were training a lot, and that's something that was pretty much kind of imposed by the government. So I was raised in that culture, so to speak.
So when you say training, is that like picking a certain martial arts discipline like boxing or jiu-jitsu or something, or you mean physical fitness in general, sports? I
talk about physical fitness, but more specifically like wrestling, judo, sambo, weightlifting, powerlifting, those kind of sports here.
So forgive my ignorance, but in America and Bulgaria, obviously you already mentioned there's some differences there, but I'm not understanding why you had to be training to advance in education.
Because it was pretty much, it was something normal during communism. The government was pretty much imposing on people that you have to be physically active, and if you're not going to be a good contributor to society. So it was something that it was actually governed by law. You had to train. You couldn't, if you were someone who wouldn't train, let's say, and wouldn't be involved in physical training, you will have hard times actually graduating even from high school, because back in the day, you needed that high score in order for you to advance. So it was actually regulated by the government. So when I tell that to people, a lot of people they look at me very, very surprised, because as I said, now it's totally different. Obviously, we have democracy, and we have, the freedom of speech and the freedom to pick and choose what we want to train if we want to, right? But back in the day, that wasn't the case, especially in the former Soviet Union countries. And that's what happened within Bulgaria. Then later on, when I finished high school, things changed. Obviously, we had changes in the government, and now it's not anymore like that. But back in the day, it was pretty much imposed by the government to be physically active and pick a sport you want to get involved with. And they give you a score based on your results there and your attendance record, and then you can progress through different levels of your education.
Well, I know you can't see us, but we're looking at you very surprised too. That's I don't know. It's like it feels good and bad. Like forcing people to train is a tough one, but at the same time, I kind of feel like our society could use a lot more force to train, or just be off the couch in general. I was surprised to hear you say sambo. Isn't that the one that Habib Nurmagomedov was a champion of before he got into the UFC?
Yeah, combat sambo. Yeah, it's exactly the same sport.
Yeah, that's a big one. You also practice jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, so Ivan, I wanted to ask you as far as like what was driving that motivation. So obviously you had the government pushing you, but what was the impact of your father and like his legacy and the training that he was doing? How did that impact you and your trajectory as far as where you ended up now?
Yeah, well, my father imposed that from really young age, that he used to tell me always, it doesn't matter what happens to you. All that matters is what you can do about it, right? And if you can change certain circumstances, then you have to change them. But if you can't, obviously you have to accept them. And training has to do a lot with that. When you get into training, you obviously develop certain set of qualities that will be helpful for you down the road, especially in your life, like discipline, controlling your emotions, obviously being persistent, never giving up, humility as well, because as we all know, when you train martial arts specifically, you're never going to be the best person out there. You will be, you'll be beaten up. You'll go through a lot of hard sessions, but that's going to teach you humility down the road and respect. So those are the qualities that really I started developing, and they really, really helped me later on, especially when I came to the United States, not knowing anyone and, pretty much starting from ground zero. So those are the qualities that my father instilled in me, and they were really, really helpful, and they keep helping me.
Absolutely. So just to clarify, now your full-time employment is surrounding personal training and dietary needs and coaching. Is that correct?
Yeah. Initially, I was managing a CrossFit gym. I was the general manager of a CrossFit gym, but since COVID hit, I started transitioning strictly into online coaching. And also I saw fantastic results with a lot of people during the online period. So I was encouraged by that, and I developed a system which really, really helps with online coaching, and I decided to go that route.
Awesome. Well, we want to jump into it here today. Our podcast focuses primarily on the in-home services industry. So we're dealing with plumbers, electricians, and HVAC techs. And these generally are men and women who are in trucks most of the day. When they're not in a truck, they're in front of somebody in their home, servicing whatever particular need they have that day, from a leak to an electrical issue to no heat, no cool, etc. It's not what I would say is your traditional 8 to 4, 9 to 5 job, whatever it may be. It's erratic. There's a lot of shift differentiation in that sometimes you're starting early, sometimes you're starting later. You have no idea when you're getting home. So it can be pretty hard to be disciplined as far as knowing exactly what your schedule is going to look like. Sometimes with that type of lifestyle, poor eating habits become part of that as well. We've already done a podcast on keto, which I believe you're not a fan of. And we want to continue looking at the health impacts of what it is to be in the trades, because it's such a growing and needing industry, and yet we want people to be in it and stay in it for a long and healthy time. So let's start off with some basics. If you were bringing in some plumbers, HVAC techs, and electricians, and we're going to sit them in front of you, what would be the first thing that you would be telling them about what they need to do to get themselves healthy?
Well, number one, I would encourage them to start tracking their food intake so they can actually see what patterns they have, what are their caloric intake, and just doing that for a week or 2-3 weeks just to get into the habit. Once they achieve that and they're consistent with it, obviously we have to develop a plan of how they can be more active, right? But unless you have a clear idea of what you're consuming, how many calories you're eating, it will be very tough for you to hit any kind of goal. So that will be the number one rule that I would actually tell them to do. So just start tracking their food intake.
And is that as simple as like just getting one of those calorie counting apps and, just keeping track of what you're putting in the body?
Yeah, pretty much downloading any macro tracking app, could be MyFitnessPal, and just getting into the habit of tracking their food intake. Because according to research, people who succeed in terms of hitting their goals, regardless if we talk about weight loss or muscle building, 80% of those people have some sort of self-accountability. They hold themselves accountable. And the best way to do that is if you have a clear idea of what you're eating, right? So this is the number one advice I would give just about anyone, especially people in that industry who are not, don't have a set schedule and don't have a clear routine in place because of their schedule. So just tracking their food intake for 2-3 weeks in a row and seeing how their weight is going to fluctuate based on that food intake.
Okay. So that is another thing that is potential, like the food intake from one week to the next could even be substantially different. One time they actually stop for lunch and they get a decent meal, and then the next time they work right through lunch and, they're eating snacks the whole day. So giving that a little bit of time would kind of probably help equal that out and give you a good idea of what the average is.
Yeah, definitely. And also based on how their body is responding in terms of their weight. If their weight doesn't change in 2-week period, that means that they're eating the same amount of calories that they're actually burning. So they can give them an idea, okay, at that amount of calories, my weight is not changing. So that is my, what is called maintenance level. And that also gives you an idea of what patterns do you have. Do you eat more food on certain days? Do you eat more food over the weekend? What is the reason of, indulging in eating more or certain periods of the day? So that has to do also psychologically to have an idea of what patterns do you build.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I can tell you that I definitely eat more when I'm stressed or, dealing with something that's challenging in my life. And sometimes people use that as a coping mechanism. So stress is definitely another part of the home services industry. There is a fair amount of stress, not only in like the hours and the demands of it, but also in dealing with clients and sometimes navigating some difficult conversations and things. How much does stress play into your diet and into your overall health?
Oh, stress is huge because stress has to do with your hunger hormone, which is called ghrelin. The more stressful you are, the more that hormone becomes more active, and you're actually, even if you're not hungry, you feel like you have cravings, you feel like you want to eat. And this is why a lot of people, when they're stressed, they actually reach out to food, they start eating even though they're not actually hungry. It's because there's the stress that's been accumulated. So stress is something that is crucial, obviously. It releases also cortisol, which can affect testosterone level and can be very detrimental over the long run. And learning how to manage that obviously is the key. And I think that training and just being physically active is a great outlet to utilize that stress into the right direction.
Okay, so that's actually really interesting. I think it's incredibly insightful to say like that's how the science of the body works, in that when stress is occurring, you get that desire to eat, or that feeling of needing to eat, even though you're not actually needing to eat. And then that, can certainly have all kinds of negative effects coming from there. Now, if I'm living the life of a tradesperson and, the first call of the day has already got me stressed out, like I'm anxious and I'm already starting to encounter those feelings of like, it's going to be a long day. I got a lot ahead of me. And, I see the 7-Eleven on the road and I stop by and grab that big bag of Cheetos and everything. What are some things that I can do to start training my mind away from that type of habit or that type of release?
Well, I would say number one, hydrate. That should be the number one thing you should do when you're stressed. Also, controlling your breathing, trying to manage that stress in the first few minutes when that happens. And the next thing is, instead of Cheetos, make sure that you have a good source of protein, because high intake of protein keeps you satiated and actually able to regulate your hunger hormone. That is another reason why a lot of people overeat, because their diets are very poor in terms of protein compared to, let's say, saturated fat and carbohydrates. So having that good amount of protein intake keeps you satiated, and it's definitely something to consider. So just to summarize, number one, control your breathing, hydrate, and also have close by source of protein. It could be, obviously the protein shake. It could be maybe nuts, even though nuts are high in fat, but still they have protein. Just something that can keep you satiated instead of buying Cheetos and snacks like that.
I see you're really going in on attacking Cheetos, Ivan, and I don't get it, because they've been nothing but good to me. But I know not all proteins are exactly created equal. So when you say high in protein, what are some proteins you tend to lean towards?
I mean, the protein, the best quality protein, obviously, is whey protein isolate, right? Which includes all the 32 essential amino acids. Now, you can reach out to plant-based proteins. They're not complete, what is called proteins.
Gross.
But in terms of sources, you can, reach out to, obviously, chicken protein shake. Edamame is a good protein source. Tofu is a good protein source as well. Just having that different varieties. Sardines, obviously, when you're traveling, right, you're kind of a little bit limited from different options, but it's still something that you can definitely consider.
Sure, I keep I don't know, probably 2 6-packs of sardines in my cabinet in my kitchen, but I probably wouldn't recommend it to a technician who's going to somebody's home next. Yeah, that would not smell great in the homeowner's kitchen. But what do you say to red meats? I was really hoping you were going to touch on like some nice ribeye or filet mignon here shortly.
Yeah, I mean, definitely is an option. You just have to go for the leanest cuts there are, right? Like filet mignon is definitely an option. But again, we just have to keep in mind that those kind of foods, they're high in calories, right? So if your goal is weight loss, at the end of the day, you still have to manage that, especially in steak. Steak is high in fat too, so you have to really consider that. But yeah, I like red meat myself. Filet mignon is a great option. It's just I don't know how doable that is when you're traveling, right? In terms of having if you meal prep, definitely an option. But if you're just traveling, maybe you want to have like a smoothie or something, like whey protein already mixed up, some edamame, some tofu, maybe some chicken stripes, something like that, something that is more handy, so to speak.
Yeah, we can't be having 1.5 hour lunches out on the road, sit-down fillets.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, Ivan, you mentioned something earlier about staying hydrated. Talk to us about that. Why is that so important, and what does that do in terms of staving off those need-to-eat feelings?
Yeah, hydrating is crucial because obviously, when you stay hydrated, that not only keeps your hormones in balance, but can also, instead of you feeling that you're hungry, it gives you that sense of fullness. Quite often people think they're hungry when in reality they're just not, they just haven't been hydrated. So getting that hydration is extremely important, not to mention that, can prevent cramps, can prevent injuries, stiffness, etc. So it's just extremely, extremely important. And also for better cognitive function as well, brain function, etc. Just having water around and drinking it regularly definitely helps.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I've done some of those, like, hey, you have to drink a 1/2 gallon of water every day for a while contests and things like that. And it does, like, I've experienced that. It substantially lowers your appetite because, well, for one, you're just drinking nonstop. So your stomach is full of water. And then, I don't know, you just kind of get tired. I got other stuff to do. I can't constantly be doing this.
Yeah. And also it prevents constipation. If you're not drinking water, it can cause to kidney stones can take place. So there's plenty of reasons to drink water, especially if you live in an area where it's very hot, prevents overheating, etc. So just having water nearby and just drinking it is it's very, very important.
Absolutely. That's something that we really encourage in the trades. Are people generally in and out of hot attics during the summer or unconditioned spaces? They're working outside, they're sweating a lot, and so we're constantly encouraging them to stay hydrated. Just for health's sake. Like, hey, you can't get too dehydrated here, or that could have heat stroke implications and those types of things. But from your angle, it's even better just to stay like that the entire year and really keep yourself healthy. Now, moving into another area as far as movement goes, that's another big area that you focus on, which is lifting or exercise and training, those types of things. As I mentioned before, the schedule of the home services industry can be erratic. So some people are early birds and they don't mind waking up at 4 a.m. and working out. Others, that's a lot more challenging. And so they look to the evening, but the evening can be unpredictable. Do you have any tips or advice on when is the best time to work out and how somebody can get into the discipline of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, in my humble opinion, and according to research, there is no best time. The question is what time could be sustainable for you, right? So it really depends on your schedule. As long as if your schedule allows for you to be more consistent in the morning, there'll be the better time for you to train. If it could be in the evening, that will be the better time for you to train. You just have to see exactly what your schedule is and work accordingly. Now, I obviously recommend training at least 3 days a week, prioritizing weightlifting, and just the rest of the days, just trying to be more active in any kind of area. Meaning, if you can walk 5,000 to 8,000 steps, for example, or just be physically active, that's perfect. But starting with 3 times a week, I think it's a very doable solution, especially if you're extremely busy. But again, in terms of timing of training, it depends on the individual and what their schedule is. If it's morning, could be morning. If it's evening, could be evening. The most important thing is to set a schedule and just being consistent with it.
Right. Okay. And you're saying recommend at least 3 times a week on and suggesting that weightlifting is a good place to be there. What about like cardio or calisthenics, those types of things? Is that something that they should also be doing on the off days, or how does that mix in?
Yeah, I mean, cardio, it's obviously it's great for your cardiovascular health and can lead also to fat loss. It also depends on the individual, how active they are. So now, if someone is a plumber, I suspect that they're doing a lot of physical work, which is a cardio on its own, right? Now, it really depends how active you are. If you work in an office, you're not moving too much. doing 3-4 times a week, slow and steady cardio. If you're very out of shape, meaning let's say walk on a treadmill or on a bicycle for 30-40 minutes is a great solution. If you're someone who has already been training and is in decent condition, then you can do some high intensity training, which means increasing the intensity and decreasing the rest intervals in between the exercises. But again, it's very, very individual. It depends on the person, what their condition is. Are they very overweight? Are they very sedentary? Or are they someone who have been pretty much training consistently? And just going from there, but having a combination of weightlifting 3-4 times a week and cardio 3-4 times a week, it's a great solution. If you're very out of shape, you can just start by walking 3 times a week, for example, 30-40 minutes, and combining that with weightlifting.
Okay, so if I'm a technician and I'm looking at myself saying, yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying, Ivan, there's a lot of good things here. I'm not currently doing anything as far as exercise. Where would be a good place for me to start? Should I just start by doing the walking, or should I jump right into the deep end and join a gym?
I would say just start by walking like for a week or 2 weeks, just to get into the habit of being active and holding yourself accountable, combining with what I mentioned earlier, tracking your food intake. Once you do that for 2-3 weeks consistently, then you can start adding some weightlifting 3 times a week, let's say, training your whole body for 40-45 minutes, right? Nothing crazy. You can do that for another month, and then you can obviously progress into dividing the specific muscle groups. But again, a lot of people feel that it's very overwhelming, because if you want to do a million things at the same time, that definitely could be detrimental to your progress, simply because your schedule is not allowing that. So just starting with small steps, let's say walking every day, set yourself a goal of walking 5,000 miles, for example, 1 week, then increase 5,000 steps.
Okay.
Yeah, then increase, then increase to, let's say 8,000 steps, etc. And just getting yourself being consistent. And then after 2-3 weeks, you can add the weightlifting. But small changes lead to big progress. So, every journey starts with one step, and you have to make that step.
Okay, so a lot of our technicians and plumbers and electricians, they're going to experience back challenges and knee challenges throughout the course of their career because of the demands of their job. So there's a ton of kneeling, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then there's also a fair amount of lifting things in awkward places or in awkward positions where you're extending your body out to try to get something and wrenching it up. And, it can be really awkward on the body. Where would be some good places or exercises to start to strengthen the knees and then also worry about your back?
Yeah, now again, it depends on the person. If the person is overweight, my first advice would be for that person to lose weight, because even if you try to strengthen those ligaments, joints, tendons, and bones, if you carry that extra weight, it's going to be tough. Number one, they have to focus on getting rid of some excessive fat that they have. Then the next thing would be to do some mobility exercises, right? Like let's say Cobra, child pose. Do a lot of stretching in the morning. Foam rolling is very important as well. And then the more you progress, the more important it is to introduce weight training, because weight training actually helps with that, helps strengthen up your core, your back, right? It helps actually increasing even the bone density, which would prevent injuries. But the number one thing is obviously getting rid of that extra fat, because that's definitely holding you back and making you more susceptible to different injuries. Once you do that, you can include some foam rolling, a lot of stretching, and then little by little introduce weight training. If you don't know how to lift weights properly, obviously hiring a personal trainer is a great solution, consulting with a chiropractor. But after you do that, you're definitely going to experience a lot of benefits. And in terms of back problems, those back problems take place a lot because a lot of people have weak core. So training your core actually is extremely, extremely important.
Speaking of training the core, what would be some good starting exercises on that? I'm just curious if there's any type of things that technicians could do, like in between calls, or like while they, when they wrap up a call and they stop at the gas station. Are there any types of quick stretches or exercises they could focus on to kind of keep them limber throughout the day?
I would say number one, plank. Plank is kind of the best exercise in terms of core stability and back stability as well. So just doing a regular plank, starting with 30 seconds. A great option. Another one will be Cobra, which pretty much means you're stretching on your belly lifting up your lower back, kind of keep your body straight. And the third one will be a child pose, just relaxing in a child pose to open up your hips and your lumbar spine too. Those are 3 great exercises they can start doing now. Obviously, in terms of doing them, I don't know, they can do them probably in the parking lot. I don't know if they're willing to do that, but it's definitely something that they can start with.
So they could just get a yoga mat and throw it down in the back of their truck.
Oh yeah, that definitely can work.
Yeah, they should have plenty of room for that child's pose. I'm not sure I'm doing that one, but how about push-ups? Anything we can do that's a little more workout and a little less stretch?
Yeah, I mean, push-ups are great, but again, if someone is overweight, they're going to have issues, training with their whole body. So you obviously have to start from, lower point and progress, build yourself up to get to the point of being able to do push-ups. It's really individual. If someone is very fit and they can do push-ups, that's obviously it's a great exercise, right? But if someone is struggling doing even 10 push-ups, for example, then you have to start with a plank. You have to try to hold on to that plank 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes if you can, and then little by little just progress from there.
So plank, for those who don't know, is you would be in push-up position, except you'd lower down onto your elbows and then just hold that position, correct?
Yeah, or you can just have the position of a regular push-up on your hands, right? This is kind of like the easier variation, right? Instead of going all the way down, just holding onto your hands, keeping your back straight. The more advanced one is, yes, on your elbow. Okay,
so to start, just get in push-up position, but don't actually go down. Just hold it as long as you can.
Yep, and just making sure that your core is activated, your back is straight, right? You don't have your butt sticking out. That is the proper form.
Now, you keep saying as long as somebody's not overweight. I feel like you've seen pictures of Brian. That's why you keep bringing that up.
So let's talk. The technicians are a large part of our audience, but also there are the office staff. We have a lot of people who listen who are customer service reps, phone reps, managers like ourselves who are largely behind a desk. Let's say somebody like Nate, pretty soft, doesn't work out, not very strong at all.
Knew I'd be getting this one back. All right, go ahead.
We say I don't work out at all. I don't do any physical fitness. I'm just now starting to want to try to get into it for the first time ever. And I'm behind my desk pretty much all day. Where would I start? What would I start with? What would you have me doing if you were just sitting in a chair next to my desk all day?
Well, again, if you're just sitting on a chair, you've never trained anything, I'll start by making small changes. First of all, going for a walk, getting into the habit of, let's say, just walking for 30 or 40 minutes consistently for 1 to 2 weeks. Then afterwards, introducing some basic weightlifting routine 3 times a week. And another thing, if you're working at a desk, you can get into the habit of, let's say, doing 10 push-ups every hour. Let's say you start working at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock comes in. If you can't do 10 push-ups, then 11 o'clock, 10 push-ups. And if you do that consistently throughout the day, I mean that, you can do like 50 push-ups, etc., even more. So just making those small changes is very important.
As far as keeping ourselves fit and trying to stay in the trades for a long term, in working out, do I have to be thinking that I need to look like you? I mean, you kind of look like a mountain over there. So is that what I'm going to look like if I keep weightlifting, or is it okay to just kind of weightlift just to maintain a certain level of strength?
So in terms of, we are all unique, right? We all have our own genetics. So it's very difficult for someone to look like a specific person. You have to be clear exactly what your goals are. And in general sense, we all train for longevity, which means to be as healthy as we can, the older we get. So you don't necessarily obviously have to try to look like somebody else. Again, weightlifting is beneficial, not only because you're going to obviously gain muscle, but you're going to get stronger. It's going to be beneficial for your bones, for injury prevention purposes. You're actually burning more calories when you lift weights. During the training itself, you're burning calories. Then when your body starts recovering from the training, you continue to burn calories. But again, the level of intensity, right, and the frequency of your training obviously has to be modified according to your own capabilities. So in that sense, let's say me, I can't train like, let's say, someone who is a Navy SEAL, for example, or someone who is a professional powerlifter in the same way. a person who is just starting out shouldn't design their program as someone who has been training for years. You have to make small changes and just developing the right habits, because we're in this game for the long run, right? It's a marathon. It's not a sprint in terms of, training.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of training, one of the things that I'll fully disclose that I struggle with is discipline, right? So I have the best intentions. I'll be at work and I'll think to myself like, yeah, I'm going to get home. And as soon as I get home, I'm going to put those sneakers on. I'm going to go for a run, whatever it may be. And then sure enough, I get home and the sneakers stay in the closet and that bag of Cheetos comes to find me again. I'm sure you've dealt in your coaching, especially online coaching, with a lot of people who are struggling with the discipline, how to get into that routine, how to start that routine when you either don't have one or it's very erratic at best. What are some tips or tactics that you can give to our listeners to help them to even start with discipline if they perhaps don't have any right now?
Great question, Nate. First of all, you can develop discipline only through action, which means that you have to act in order for you to develop discipline. But if someone struggles with that, I personally would suggest to them to write down 10 reasons why they need to work out, right? How them not training is affecting their life. And I'm saying, for example, their libido is low, lack of energy, they're overweight, they don't look good in their clothes, etc. Just make that list. Make the list. Why do you have to work out, right? And then read that list twice a day, in the morning and at night. So when you read that list, it's going to obviously create certain emotions in you, which should propel you to take action. But unless you have a very strong why, you're not going to take action. I always tell people, if somebody tells you that you have to lose weight in 1 month, or they're going to, shoot your kid, for example, what are the chances you're going to lose weight? I mean, you will, right? Why? Because the consequence of not losing weight are very severe, and there could be a very, very extreme example, but I'm just trying to illustrate that.
Well, sure.
If you have
put it in a more positive context. If somebody said, "Here's a check for $500,000, you have to be down 20% of your weight in 60 days," everybody would do it.
Yeah. This is exactly my point. That if the reason for you, the why is strong enough, you will find anyhow. And there's a great book by, I think, Viktor Frankl, Man Searching for Meaning. He's pretty much explaining that you have to have a strong why in order for you to achieve anything. So just working on your mindset before you start the training, it's very important, because you can have the best intentions in the world unless you take action. It's pointless, right? So just having that idea of why do you want to be fit, and by you not being fit, how is that affecting your life right now? And once you can build that image should prepare you to taking action, right? So I do a lot of mindset work with my clients to put them into the right mindset of why is it important for them to take action and get fit. Because at the end of the day, if you get fit, that will affect every area of your life. You're going to be a better worker, you're going to be a better leader, you're going to be a better husband, better father. Everything is going to be affected by it. You just have to develop your why, and you have to be able to build that image of how that's going to affect your life. And once you're crystal clear on that image, that will actually propel you taking action. And the more action you take, the more disciplined you're going to become.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Understanding your why has such great implications, not with just working out, but really in every area of your life, pursuing education or choosing a family or whatever it may be. Like, understanding the why is really what motivates us. Those are really good words there. Now, Ivan, I'm curious, as far as accountability, where does that play in here? Our technicians do primarily work in a solitary role. So they're pretty much by themselves, other than the mornings, for the rest of the day. They call and text each other and those types of things. But it's pretty much a solo role. Where does accountability from other people factor into you staying disciplined or you staying on target with your health goals?
Yeah, accountability is huge, because especially if you haven't made those changes yourself and developed discipline at the beginning, it's going to be tough. No one is, wakes up one day and is super accountable. super disciplined, right? You need time to develop that. So at least at the beginning, it definitely would be good to have a support system in place, family members, friends, someone who can hold you accountable. And that is for every area, especially for those guys that are working those type of jobs that are very difficult jobs. So if they can have somebody holding them accountable, like a friend, coworker, and they can lay out exactly the goals that they have, let's say every week, and someone holding them accountable, accomplishing those goals, that would be amazing. And then over time, that's going to build up discipline for them to actually start holding themselves accountable. But at least at the beginning, it's going to be tough because every change we want to make, there is a high level of resistance that is opposing that change, and you have to be able to push through it. So having the right support system is definitely very helpful.
I'll tell you, getting into that extreme ownership Facebook group, which is not difficult to get into, and just we see people, Ivan and I see people do it all the time where they say, hey, just starting to work out for the first time, here's my plan and here's what I'm going for. And then everybody, they like the post and then they start giving advice in the comments, and they really do hold each other accountable in there. A great place to start is just to get in one of these types of Facebook groups and publicly post what you're going to do. What does Weldon Long say? Public declarations predict future actions. So if you get in there and say, here's a pic of me now, might not be your proudest moment, but here's where I want to be in 90 days or 6 months or what have you, and I'm asking for any advice that will help me get there, and here's my program. The people in those groups will help you be accountable. It's positive, it's uplifting. They don't beat you down and they don't get super negative. And feel free to find me on Facebook, shoot me a private message, and I'll get you into one of these groups if you're interested.
We can also hang your picture in the hallway here at work too, if you'd like. A little public accountability.
Yeah.
All right, Ivan. So we've kind of covered the gamut of many things here as far as eating well and making sure that you know what your calorie intake is, so that you even know, are you at a plateau or are you gaining weight, losing weight, and then started into looking at, what are some good methods of exercise and stretching, what are some things that we should be focusing on to keep our bodies healthy and strong, and then developing that discipline and moving into accountability. What, if any, other areas of focus in the health realm would you bring to the attention of our listeners as far as focus points in the home services industry?
I mean, my advice would be just consistency, because even with the nutrition, for example, as you mentioned before, I'm not a big fan of keto, but the reason I am not is because of how many people are falling off from that type of nutrition, right? There's no best diet. The key is sustainability. So you have to find something that works for you, and it can be sustainable with your lifestyle and your goals. And once you do that, the key is just being consistent with it, right? So that will be my advice. Find what works for you and just be consistent with it.
Yeah, we didn't actually mention it on the episode, but we had talked before about the fact that Ivan's not a huge fan of the keto carnivore diet, not because necessarily it doesn't work, because it obviously does work for people, but because there is a high rate of people getting off of it and then gaining all the weight back. And I am a fan of those ways of eating, but also I'm up at 4:15 every morning and in the gym to lift weights. So for me, it is a two-sided approach.
Yeah, it's because, again, it's really about sustainability. I'm not a fan of generalizing and telling everybody should be following this. No, you have to see what works for you. Now, at the end of the day, in terms of, let's say, fat loss, is really about the amount of calories you consume and what are your sources, where you're getting your calories from. But if for some people, keto is sustainable for them and keep them satiated, yes, I'm all for it. But at the end of the day, you have to find what is consistent for you and what can be sustained over a long period of time. Because over the short term, you can lose weight, but by just not eating it all. But of course, you can't sustain that. So the moment you start eating again, you're going to gain weight. So successful diet is a diet that can introduce you to a whole lifestyle change where you're consistent and sustainable results you're getting, not something that can work for you for a month and then you ended up gaining the weight or just falling off track.
And this is where you specialize. So I definitely want to get into this, which is you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you customize, you build programs for people custom to their own starting point and where they want to end up. And you do diet as well as fitness, correct?
Yeah, what I do is it's a complete mentorship. It's 90 days pretty much. I cover their nutrition, their training, accountability. I set the right habits for them. We do a lot of mindset work for them to be consistent and have a bigger vision in terms of their whole life change that's going to take place. And yes, I do obviously provide a lot of nutritional advice. I structure the nutrition, and again, I work strictly individually with each person, which means that some people who have a great feedback on the keto diet, I might put them on a keto diet. With other people, intermittent fasting could be the key. I personally am a proponent of flexible dieting. This is something that I do, right? But for some people who have hard time moderating certain foods, it might not be the best option. So I'm fully aware that each person is unique, individual, and you have to work with their preferences and what works for them.
I'm not familiar with that. What was that term again that you used?
It's called flexible dieting. Another term for it is if it fits your macros, which pretty much, if I can make it simple, means that you can eat anything you want, not just as much as you want.
Oh, I love that.
But you have a certain amount of protein, fat, and carbohydrates that you need to get every day, and you just can't go over that, correct?
Yeah. It's like a budget. For example, if your caloric budget is 2,000 calories, it's up to you how you're going to spend your budget, right? You can go have a cheesecake, for example, but it's 500 calories, and now you have 1,500 calories left. So, right, it's up to you to decide how you want to spend that. But again, obviously, you have certain targets in terms of protein, carbs, and fat, so you have to be able to hit those. But again, flexible dieting gives you some sort of flexibility. So if, let's say, you want to have a cake here and there, that's not going to kill you. You can't. Again, the goal is sustainability over the long run. I personally, if I have to deprive myself from certain foods, I'm not going to be consistent with it. I enjoy having, chocolate here and there, let's say ice cream. So that works for me really well, and it works for a lot of people. Now, if you can't control how much of those foods you're going to eat, flexible dieting might not be a good option for you.
That makes sense. And that's definitely a struggle that I would have as far as controlling certain foods.
But and it sounds confusing to technicians and customer service reps that have really never dabbled in this kind of thing where you're limiting your calorie intake for the day. And it sounds like a lot, but correct me if I'm wrong. After probably a few weeks of doing this, you would think that if Nate started doing this right now, he would start getting a pretty good idea of how many calories are in a food just by seeing it. Does it take very long to develop that?
No, I would say it takes 2 weeks, and that is the reason why tracking your food intake helps a lot, because you can see those numbers for yourself, and the more you do that, the easier it becomes.
Hey, good stuff, Ivan. We're going to be bringing it in for a landing here. And before we do that, I wanted to ask if people are interested in learning more about you or the programs that you offer, where's the best place to find that?
They can find me on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. My name is Ivan Cholakov. I have also a group. It's called Jack Dad. In this group, we discuss more about flexible dieting. We discuss training strategies. And the best way to contact me is really through my social media.
Yeah, send me a link to the group you have. I'm actually not part of it.
All right, yeah, I'll do that.
And we'll also post it on the Waste No Day Facebook page and Instagram page as well. So what's going on? What's going on with you, Ivan? I love your story. I love the journey. How do you like it here? What do you like about being here versus Bulgaria? Tell us what's next for you. What are you doing? What are you aiming for? What are the goals you have?
I'm very blessed to be living here, my friend. I don't even know how to express it. I have met some amazing people, and I meet amazing people here in the United States. I've been given so many opportunities that I would never think would be possible if I was still in Bulgaria. So in that sense, I'm very grateful, and I'm always going to be grateful. So in terms of my personal goals, I want to further expand my coaching, hire more coaches who have similar values like mine. And my goal is having at least 1 million transformations. So until I get to that point, helping 1 million people, I'm not going to be really satisfied. So that is my my personal goal in terms of my coaching.
Wow.
And just expand in that direction, because again, the more people I can work with, the more people I can help, and that is what drives me actually. But in terms of how I like it here, I mean, I love it. Obviously, there's so much freedom here, which a lot of people unfortunately take for granted, but nevertheless, it's part of the culture in the United States. You have the freedom to disagree. You have the freedom to agree with whatever you want to agree with. That is the beauty of it. And unfortunately, there are a lot of countries that don't have those freedoms. So we have to be grateful for that. And I'm extremely grateful.
Is there an example you could give us of something that maybe a recent one where to you it's still, even 9 years later, a surprise that it's this free or easy, but that somebody like Nate and myself would take for granted and not even realize we have it?
I mean, for example, when I was growing up in Bulgaria, food supplies were pretty limited. So if you want to go to the store, you were entitled to just buy one type of bread, one type of cheese, one type of meat. There was no varieties of it, and you had to wait on a huge line, right? But now when you go here in any store, you have so much variety to choose from. It actually gets overwhelming sometimes because you can't even choose. There's just so much choice you can make, right? So that is one example I can make. And also in the freedoms that we have here in terms of expression, you gotta understand that during communism, you couldn't actually criticize the government. You couldn't even protest against it. We would be immediately squashed, and people would be actually thrown in jail for that. My great-grandfather was in jail because he was criticizing the government. Here, obviously, we have those freedoms. You can go out and curse the president out or do whatever you want in terms of your freedoms of speech, and there's no consequences for it, right? In the general sense. So yeah, those are another thing that it's quite different from over there, especially when I was growing up. Now, obviously, things are changed because it's different government, but when I was growing up, it was much different.
Wow, that's such a good reminder for all of us, especially in what can often feel like a politically heavy time. Appreciate those words of encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great having you on today, Ivan. It was a pleasure to finally talk to you. And we wish you much success and hope we can help you get to your goal of 1 million transformations. We'd love to have you back on maybe in a few months and then just have you as a regular guest and keep tabs on your progress toward that goal.
Thank you so much, Nate. I'm humbled to be in your podcast. It really means a lot. I'm very grateful. Thanks to you guys, and God bless you. Thank you.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed this podcast with Ivan, and it was really good to just listen to him talk about the different exercises and ways that we can really look at keeping ourselves healthy. I loved his approach on how he not only just focuses on what is going to work for you, but is willing to explore different options, different dietary programs, different methods. But his end goal is that transformation. He's shooting for 1 million transformations, which is such an awesome goal. I hope that you have a goal like that too. Maybe yours is for yourself personally, losing some weight or getting more in shape or whatever it may be. But that's one more thing we want to encourage you to do, not only in the home services industry, but if you're listening to this podcast just as a whole, we want you to be focusing on making yourself better. That's our motto here. We want to choose to wake up every single morning to waste no day.